Hey, everybody out there in YouTube land and maybe Facebook if you're watching it that way. Welcome back. I'm Chuck McDonald. Thanks for checking out my page. This is the third video we're doing in the Eshter Company series that I feel God's leading me to do. And so today we're going to talk about some good stuff, some controversial stuff, some fun stuff. But before we get started, I want to tell you guys thank you. Thank you for coming. And I need you. I need you to help share and invite people to watch these videos, because if there are people who are out there who are understanding the intimacy talk and the things that the Spirit's trying to do along those lines, I need your help getting these videos to them and maybe help and encourage, maybe even bring in some more information, along the lines, and we can all grow together, right? So thank you. Thank you for liking and subscribing. And so let's go. Okay, so we've been talking about intimacy, and it's when God spoke to me about the Eshter Company, it became strange to me, strange language, because you almost pigeonhole, when you say Esther, you pigeonhole an idea. And that's not really what it is. The Eshter Company, if you look at the life of Esther, Esther became queen and saved her nation, right? Because of her intimacy with the king. And we'll get into some more details about that later. Now, I don't want everybody to think this is a Bible study about the book of Esther, because I'm not going to break down and go through every chapter and everything that happens in the book of Esther. That's not it. Just basically, when you talk about the subject of intimacy, I think Esther is the perfect first example. There are many examples in the Bible that we will probably get into. So in Esther chapter 1, in order to understand the intimacy that Esther shared with King Xerxes, you have to first understand how she became queen. And the reason Esther became queen was because Xerxes, it said, if you read Esther chapter 1, Xerxes put on a party, man. He said, I'm king. I've been king for 3 or so years. Let's just invite everybody in, and I'm going to show everything off. I'm going to show off my armies. I'm going to show off my money, my gold reserves, whatever it is, back in that day. The Bible even uses a word called opulent display of his wealth of the nation. He was putting on a show, right? So they did that for like 180 days or so. You can read it in Esther chapter 1. Now, I'm not going to read the story, because Esther chapter 1 is like 21 or so verses, 22 verses. And so I would sit here and read for 10 minutes. And I know that's boring. It would bore me, so I'm not going to bore you. So you can go back and read it as you need to. But let's look at what happened. Esther became queen because Xerxes' first queen, Vashti is her name, he had showed everything off. And he's like, wait a minute. Let me show you my most prized possession, my bride. I want everyone to see the beauty, because the Bible says she was very beautiful. I want to show her beauty. And so we all know the story. Vashti said, not playing that game. That's a southern term. So she said no. She stood up to the king. She said, King, here's what you want, but I'm not giving it to you. Here's what I want. And so I think first, before we dive into the beauty of Esther's intimacy with the king, we have to understand why intimacy with Vashti and Xerxes was destroyed, right? So Vashti said no. Vashti was the bride who told the king, no, I'm not interested in what you want. I'm not interested in what you want from me. I'm not interested in what you're asking of me. I'm interested in being queen, and you deal with it. That's a strong way of putting it. I understand that. And we're going to get to why this is important. I feel this is important. So we have a bride who is entitled, and she wants it a certain way, and she wants it her way, and she thinks it should work this way. Okay, so when you use bride, you're going to have to look at the bride of Christ. And why I think personally that the American church, the westernized version of the church, is failing because the bride itself is entitled. It's become politically driven by boards and people who vote and say, I have a voice and I want to be heard, and we should put the guy up there I want up there, or girl. So yeah, that's good. First of all, let me say this. Second of all, or wherever I'm at in the world, this is not an attack toward females or women in general. Listen, I was in the military. I had women that were my superiors. I do not have a problem with it. I've run with some of the most amazing women in ministry who are leaders and who are strong women, and that's not what I'm getting to. Okay? So if you look at this from a natural perspective, this is going to make you really mad because all the women are going to get mad, and when the women get mad, the men are going to get mad because the women are mad, and the women aren't playing nice with the men. That's not where I'm coming from. We have to look at this from a spiritual aspect, okay? We are known as the bride. I'm a man. I grow my goatee. I have chest hair. I shave my head. I am a man. I am very confident in my manhood, but I am a bride. I am a part of the bride of Christ. And if intimacy is my concern and my number one goal with my beloved, I have to be comfortable in that as well. And I have to see it from a spiritual standpoint, from a kingdom standpoint. The kingdom is at hand, right? Oh, and that's where you could go preach for hours, right? But let's look at Esther. Esther was given the opportunity because the bride of the king said, I'm not interested. And if you look at this spiritually, those who are willing to be intimate with the Father now, with the beloved Son, those who are the bride of Christ, those who are willing to be intimate, will enter into the kingdom position through intimacy, not through warfare. Okay? Not by being a strong bride and a warrior bride. I really don't like that analogy, the warrior bride, because the bride is intimate. No bride ever fights on the front lines of a war. Esther won her nation through intimacy, not through warfare. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. So Vashti, we got this entitlement thing going on. We here in America know it. You might as well go ahead and say amen. You're entitled. You're political because you're thinking if I vote a certain way and that guy gets in or girl gets in, then the nation will turn the way I want it to turn. And we're driven by the wrong reasons. We're not driven by intimacy. We're driven by entitlement. I feel it should be this way, right? So let me get to this. I had a dream last year, 2021. I want to say somewhere around March, April, May. And in this dream, I was in a service in a big church, and it had like the 5-step platform, and the platform was full of people and leaders, and I looked to the back, and I could see the back door, and the church was full, and it was packed, and the music was just off the charts, and the worship was like insane, and it was one of those moments you want to be caught up in. Well, in my dream, a lady walked in from the left. Now, before I get to that, I'm sitting center aisle on the end of like the third row. And so I could really take in my dream what's going on around me. And so this lady walked in, undressed. She was fully nude. And so you have to process those things with a mature sense of who God is. We'll leave it at that. She came in, she walked right to the center of the stage, and she pointed to the platform, and she made a gesture and kind of told them to be quiet for a minute. So the worship that was going on was settled down immediately. And I could hear a lady in the back of the church by the back door. She was trying to say something. So this lady, completely undressed, walks and she stands right beside me. And I look to the back and she looks to the lady sitting in the back and she says, now, baby, you say whatever it is you need to say, they will be quiet and listen. And then the dream ended. I processed that for a little while, okay? Because you have to find out what symbolism and what does this mean? How do I understand? And God speaks to me through dreams. I've had dreams since I was a child. I have sometimes 2 or 3 dreams in a night. And the ones where God's speaking to me, they really stand out to me. And this, I never wrote this down. I can remember vividly all the details within this dream. So anyway, so through prayer, fasting, seeking God, here's what I got out of that dream. Because I understood being in the house of God. I understood the leadership on the stage because they were all leaders. Normally, you think in a church that size, you'll see a choir. They were all leaders. I can remember seeing them in my dream. These were leaders, and they were worshiping. And the woman who came in control and took control of the service. Now, you have to see this from a spiritual standpoint, and I'll explain that in a minute. I asked God, who is that? Like how I know how it happens because people try to control things all the time. I knew it was some type of control. And here's what the Spirit spoke to me now, and you have to work with me here. He said it's the spirit of feminism. And of course, when you say that, if you look at that from a natural standpoint, people are going to get really offended, male and female, across the board. Because I'm not talking about oppressing women and you should be just barefoot and pregnant all the time. And that's not what I feel the Spirit was showing me. What it was showing me was a bride who wanted it her way. Okay? Does that make sense? I hope so. And you can comment. We can engage in conversation. I can explain a lot more. I'm trying to keep these videos compacted where I'm not just downloading an hour or 2 worth of information on you for you to process, okay? So he said it's the spirit of feminism. It's a bride who wants it her way. And immediately I remembered a few years, probably 4 or 5 years before that, God showed me the American church, and it was a wife sitting on a couch watching TV. She's checking her Facebook and her whatever on her phone, lays her phone down, grabs a tablet, plays a game on her tablet, and every now and then will reach over to her husband and hold his hand. And they're just sitting on the couch. There's no intimacy, but there is presence. His presence is there, but intimacy is not what she's interested in. She's just interested in him being there, his presence. The American church wants his presence, but they're not willing to pay the price in intimacy to get his presence. They just want pieces and parts of his presence. You could go through the Bible, through the New Testament. There were Mary, who I love to talk about more than anybody, Mary who worshiped on Jesus' feet. She got in trouble for being on his feet, but everybody in the room had Jesus' presence, but they didn't have his attention because she was willing to go the extra step to just lay on his feet and weep. Okay? So I feel the spirit of feminism has invaded the church here in America. I believe it's a true spirit. I believe it's what caused feminism to rise up in America because I believe in women's lib. I believe you have the right to have the job, make more money. If you're better than me, go for it, girl. I'm down with that. But what it did was took a pendulum swing from the old school people who say, I'm the husband and you're the wife and you do that. And now it's into this, women control all the sex and a lot of the money. It is a spirit of control because it swung too far the other way. And when you have a pendulum swing in doctrine, I like to teach this a lot, somewhere in the middle is the actual truth. And we take it too far one way or we take it too far the other. But the truth is in there. All lies are centered around some kind of truth to make you believe the lie. That's what Satan, that's what he's so good at. It's not that he's a great, powerful monster with horns and a tail and a pitchfork like we think. In Genesis, it said he was more cunning than anything. Satan is just smart at twisting how you think. Okay? And I want to get to this, Because if you look at the life of Esther, before she could get into intimacy, the feminism had to be moved out of the way. Okay, and now I'm speaking as the church. Now, me personally, there's nothing can stop me. The church can't stop me. People can't stop me. Satan can't stop me. Nothing can stop me from being intimate with my King. He ripped the veil, gave me access into the throne room, and it's mine, and there's nothing you can do about it. But as a church body, as a whole, as the body of Christ, as the bride of Christ, we have to remove some of these things before we can enter into the fullness of what God called the church to be. And I believe in the church. I don't slap at the church. I don't beat down the church. I don't run down pastors just because they don't do it the way I like it or think it should be done. I believe in the church. It's God's institution. So check this out. Here's what struck me the past few weeks before I did this video. So it took me a few days to get here. I had to process something. So in the book of Revelation, I was reading in the book of Revelation, and because that stuff blows me, it's all twisted up, and you have to go through. And this is not a study on Revelation, because what's actual and what's God's symbolism, and oh man, we could get in that. But you get into Revelation, you get into Revelation 12, 13, 14, God deals with Satan, takes him out. Just pretty much shows he's nothing. He's not going to be anything, no matter what plan you have for the serpent, the beast, whatever you want to call it. God's knocking all that down. He's dead. He's gone. Done over with. And in Revelation 19, he talks about the bride that had adorned herself and made herself ready without spot and wrinkle or any such thing if you're going to be King James. Before he gets there, he deals with Babylon. So he kills the serpent off, and he deals with Babylon. And what does he say about Babylon? She had made herself ruler over the kings of the nations. She had used her perversions and her lusts and her doctrines. Babylon, she was the one that was perverting the world before the bride showed up in Revelation 19. And he dealt with a her. God dealt with the spirit of Babylon, and it calls it a her because of lust and perversion and how she twists intimacy to get what she wants out of it. The Babylonians stole the Ark of the Covenant, and to this day we still don't know where it is. We're still arguing about where the Ark of the Covenant is. The spirit of Babylon has always been there from the beginning. She has always been there. And she has been perverting and twisting things to keep us out of the kingdom. And God deals with that spirit before, he says, the bride made herself ready. In Revelation 19, the bride made herself ready. He split our theology in the Babylonian thinking and opened up a door for a bride to make herself ready. And I believe that's where we stand today. We need to look this spirit in the face and knock it out and send it back to hell where it belongs and live as the bride of Christ until we lose our entitlement, until we lose our right for what we want in intimacy. What does your prayer life look like? Is it a bunch of sticky notes that you're in there roaring and decreeing and declaring? And all those things are needed. And all those things are great. But are you intimate with him before you try to pray and prophesy? Because if you pray and prophesy without intimacy, what are you? You're just spewing things out there. Intimacy is what he wants. It's called the secret place. And it's not a secret that that's what he wants. There are people Jesus looked at and said, "Depart from me. I never knew you." That word "knew" is gnosis in the Greek. It's the same word Mary used when she told Gabriel, "How can I be pregnant, seeing I gnosis, not a man? I have not been intimate. How can I birth something if I haven't been intimate?" And you do not know Christ if you are not living in intimacy. Do me a favor. Take all the sticky notes down. Lose your warrior mentality for just 1 minute and go lay in his lap and ask him what he wants in the secret place. That's what the bride does. The bride does not go into intimacy with her demands and her needs and her wants. True intimacy realizes that it pleases me to please him. A true bride wants to please him. What do you want? How do you want? How long do you want me to lay here and pray? How much do you want me to live in devotion? Because that's what the spirit of Babylon, I'm going to call it feminism, that's what's killing intimacy with Christ. And without intimacy, you're birthing nothing. So, hey, we're done. Intense, but real. It's intense, but it's real. Listen, we have to live in intimacy. We have to take our armor off. I learned a statistic a few years back, maybe 4 or 5 years. Statistic may have changed. But at that time, the divorce rate among Navy SEALs was like 90-95%. Because warriors do not know how to do intimacy. We must be a people of intimacy. And from that place, we will win wars. The king fights the wars. And he sends the troops. Now, that's another subject. That's another 30 minutes right there. So anyway, thank you guys. I love you guys. Go back and read Esther 1. There are some great nuggets in there, how he had 7 eunuchs, 7 churches. Just go, there's 180 days that he spent. I mean, there's just so many nuggets in there to be pulled out. But I believe before we move into intimacy, we have to understand why intimacy is available. It's because that's what he seeks. And if we're not going to be the bride that gives him the intimacy he seeks, we're not going to win our nation. So I love you guys. Appreciate you. My phone's going off all of a sudden because that's how I know I'm entering into the kingdom. Appreciate you guys. Love you guys. Like, share, stay posted. We're going to get into some other stuff. I hope you guys have a great, awesome, blessed day.